Thank you for joining me, fellow Guardians. This is Sam from Multiverse Mission Control, and today's quest is learning video games. Before we begin, I realized that I forgot to cover something in the camera episode last time, and that is the heads-up display, called the HUD for short. Basically, that's the indicators all around the sides of the screen telling you things like your health, your ammo, your specials, and such. Basically, you gotta think of it like you're driving a car and every so often you glance over to look at the gas, or like you're waiting for a timer to go off on your phone and every so often you check it. Anyway, I've seen this overwhelm people quite a bit when they're starting out, so I feel kind of bad skipping over it, but anyway, my advice, quite paradoxically, is just to ignore it for the most part. I mean, you should always check your health when you get hit to see how many of those hits you can take. And you should check your specials when the pressure's on to see if you can buy yourself a bit of breathing room. But most of the time, save checking your status for the quiet moments. Because if you just focus on the action at hand, then you won't even need to worry about dying in the first place. Okay, back on topic. So a few episodes ago, we covered how to handle your controllers. So this time around, I'd like to cover common input commands that you may run into on your adventure. Some games may differentiate between tapping a button and holding a button. A tap is a light touch, like an intentional twitch, roughly half a second at most. For a hold, you actually press like you mean it. Most action only requires a tap, but you may see hold in situations like charging a special attack, a rhythm minigame, or simply just to jump higher. Another command you may need to know is the rapid tap. This command usually only shows up in QuickTime events, which are like cutscenes that flash button prompts on screen. The rapid tap will almost always occur in an instant of intense action. Simply channel the excitement you're feeling, mix it with your desire to win, grit your teeth, and jam at it like a clicker whose battery is dying. Just a little... If anything is going to give you carpal tunnel, it would be this. I've seen this command exhaust some older players, so if it seems like your game includes a lot of these, my advice would be that if you're starting to feel stressed, maybe pause for a bit, catch your breath, pace yourself, and if you can, find a save point. Much like tapping and holding, your control sticks may also change action depending on the amount of oomph you give them. A game may have you tilt lightly to sneak or balance and push it forward to run. And as we've said before, you can also push them in, L3 and R3. If you do it right, you'll hear the audible click. That's usually for like crouching or aim modes or stuff like that. Of course, the tricky part comes when you have to remember what does what in the middle of the action, especially because it's different for every game. That's why it's so crucial to experiment and practice a bit when you first get control of the character. Familiarize yourself with what it looks like when you tap a button and when you hold it, and when you tap certain buttons in conjunction. See if you can chain some actions together like a jump and an attack. While you're in a calm moment where you can concentrate, you should imagine being faced with obstacles that may require chained actions, and, use the time to practice. Then you can also plan contingencies when and if things don't turn out as you expect. Don't just expect to rush into the action and master everything right away. Master your moves in the calm before you take them into the real deal. Martial artists will teach their students the moves in slow motion and in moments of calm before they will even allow them to spar. Because if you just learn to do something fast, you will learn how to do it fast and wrong. If you have good form, then if you can do it slow, you can do it fast. Then of course there are occasions where you have to hold multiple buttons at once, and there are 3 kinds of scenarios that usually pop up for this. The first involves the main buttons, which use the right thumb. In this case, the buttons you need to press will be right next to each other on the diagonals. Your thumb should be able to at least half cover both at once. You can experiment just by sliding it around the pad a bit. If a game ever incorporates this, then knowing what it looks like to hold just one of the buttons will help you determine when you're doing it right. The second kind of hold combines one or more of the shoulder buttons with one of the main buttons, such as L2 to aim and square to shoot or something similar to that. In this case, the buttons are quite distanced from each other, so that may make things difficult. First, isolate what it's like to hold each one individually. Alternate a few times until you can train your digits to work together, in sync. Third, you've got button plus direction, which you most of the time see in platformers. Usually, you just lean in with the direction and the button with both thumbs at the same time. Just kind of lean into it with both. But for shorter hops, it's going to take a tighter window because too long of a jump will actually make you overshoot. So, when you got to do something like that, You just gotta train yourself to push and release with both until you can just get it quicker and quicker, because it's gonna be a quick flick that gets you there in the end. Of course, there will be occasions in which you have to blend all of these, but those won't appear until later in the game, long after you've mastered all the other individual ones. Finally, we have motion controls, and these can be very finicky even at the best of times. They'll be more common on the Wii, but a few PlayStation titles have been known to use them. If you know your game uses motion controls, it might be a good idea to keep your controller in a neutral position, most of the time. That way, the motion sensors will remain still for most of the time. Then, when the time comes, the key is not to be timid about the movement. You make it sharp, like you mean it. Yeah, you make those motion sensors realize that we just went from still to unambiguously moving. And, of course, this varies from game to game and console to console, so sometimes you just need to feel it out and go with what works for you. Well, hope that was helpful. Just try to take this video one section at a time until you think you've got it down pat. With that, we've ended the first arc of what I've got planned. We've covered the base mechanicals of what you need to get started, but mechanicals are only part of what makes a game. For an hours-long button-mashing endeavor to feel worthwhile, a good game needs to blend good mechanics seamlessly with aesthetics, culture, mind games, and narrative. So here's what the schedule looks like from this point on. For the next episode, I'd like to suggest some tips to help players psych themselves up for the action. After that, I'll devote a few episodes to different kinds of communication that take place during gameplay. And finally, I'm going to hit some genre-specific tips for platformers, cinematics, shooters, brawlers, and fighting games. These are the most commonly encountered, and tips from these tend to appear in other games as well. After that, the series is basically over unless there are any fan requests that y'all want me to tackle. So, thank you all for tuning in, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and remember, you all have the potential to get good. Peace out.